Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Baldwin number 0496150 casement fastener is what this is. That's what the packaging looks like. So the 0496, and I have one removed from the packaging, is a casement fastener. A casement fastener is a fairly generic piece of equipment when it comes to securing something, although obviously it's intended for use on casement applications. And while I'm certainly not a window expert, doors would be more of what we do here, most certainly. A casement window is generally a window that will be hinged on the side, on the vertical style, like a door would be, and would swing out of the room, of the space, into the exterior. And there's obviously a variety of different mechanisms and manufacturers who make them and hinge types, etc. But at the end of the day, this casement fastener with this handle is literally meant to allow you to secure that outswinging casement window, is what it is. So a casement fastener literally is nothing other than a handle and a latch, or a bolt, so to speak, and then what they call the standard strike. Now the standard strike is meant to be mortised to the jamb so that it would actually look like this when it's in the secured position, and when the window is meant to be operated, you'd rotate that, and then the window would open up and out. So as a result of it being a casement application, which infers outswing, which infers this type of strike that you could call a mortise strike, but Baldwin would certainly call this a standard strike. Let's take some basic dimensional properties of the item, and then we will take a look at the supporting documentation. So the dimensions of the base plate, they have 2 1/16 by 1 1/16. So yeah, okay, but just heavy on 2 inch, and then same 1 inch really in the width. The overall projection, and I'll hold it upside down to try to gauge that, looks like it's about 1 inch and 13/16 or so. Okay, projection of the bolt from the center line appears to be about 1 3/8 perhaps. Okay. Now that strike, about 2 15/16 overall length, and its width looks like it's about 3/4 inch. The thickness of the strike, 0.077, so just heavy on 1/16 of an inch. So screws are also included in a complementary finish. Okay, the 0496 is available in different finishes, so let's switch now to the screen view and take a look at the supporting documentation. Okay, so this is the item that we're looking at, 0496. Not a lot to see here, but these pages are always evolving, and so they'll show you a generic image out of the factory original catalog, along with a reference to the strike, the base size, which we've verified. It is a mortise strike. They may call it a standard strike as well, but it's meant to be mortised certainly to the jamb. And how that might look would certainly be, you have a and I'll just draw, well, we'll do both sides. Okay, you have your window that's going to fit in here. Okay, and let's say that swings out, and your casement lock or fastener will basically fit inside of here. That bolt is of course going to penetrate into this area, and where that strike is meant to go is right here. You would mortise that to the jamb, and then you would lock or bolt it in place right there. Okay, generally. Now, no hard and fast rules. I've seen casement fasteners used in other applications as well, anywhere where you need some sort of a latch. The issue, however, because you're dealing with the Mortise Strike, you don't have an option to really install it in other applications that you don't have access to a jamb. What I mean to say is, if this was an in-swing door and you needed a way to mount that handle on the inside, there's no appropriate strike because they don't include what we would call a rim strike. So there's no way to mount it on the pull side. That's really where it's called a casement fastener, because it can only be installed on the interior of an exterior unit that swings out. Okay, and that's why that, in my opinion, it is like that. So let's switch now. Well, actually, let's solid forged brass construction doubles the tensile strength over ordinary sand castings. So forged brass, what they're saying is simply a stronger process of creating the brass components over casting the material, over creating a casting. And forged is by far a much smoother finish on the final components compared to castings. Castings will never have as smooth of a finish or of a fine of a detail when compared to forging the material. Assembled with self-lubricating washer for positive constant tension and smooth operation. I can attest to that. There is a very nice positive action on this. No slop, no play. Stays where you put it. High quality design eliminates surface imperfections for attractive appearance. And that goes back to the forging process of how nice of a fit and finish this is. Now this is in the 150 finish. 150 by Baldwin is satin nickel. You might also call it 619. You might hear it referred to as US 15. Baldwin calls it 150. It would be very appropriate to call this 619 because that means it's made of solid brass. Number one. Number two, it's satin nickel plated. And then number three, it has a clear coat over it. Now this link here to the manufacturer's page is a very handy document. And on that page will be several items that I will point out to you, and we're going to do a little deeper dive on this material. This is going to be available certainly in several different finishes, and we will take a look at that right now. The manufacturer's page is loaded, and on the manufacturer's page you'll be able to see not only all of the Baldwin products that we sell as a result of the navigation here, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to their full product catalog. But I suspect this is actually not their full product catalog. The trouble that I have with Baldwin is I deal mostly in their commercial hardware. Forgive me, not commercial hardware. They're trim and auxiliary hardware. I don't delve into very often the world of some of their residential locks. The material that's not their estates collection is what I'm driving at. So they will very often, and their estates collection is their top end, their full line of material. Mortise locks generally, knobs, levers, things of that nature. Now, in the older catalogs, the older binders that that I first initially learned how to work with Baldwin, had everything where I wanted it and where I needed it. Well, they've separated that stuff out, and the document that I use for some of this hardware is a very old catalog and price list from 2009. And if we were to fire that document up, it's certainly going to give us the information that we need on our 0496. And what's handy about that is it will show some additional information as well. So here's the 0496. Okay. Now there are other sizes of this material, and those different sizes are in. I should say a different size. The other size is the smaller version, which could be the 0493 if we were comparing it to the 0496. So what we have here is we've got the smaller 91, 92, 93, okay, with an 1 5/8 by 7/8 base size, smaller projection, than the 94, 95, 96. What changes between those is the strike that you would get supplied with this. So a 96 An 0496 means the Mortise Strike. In the smaller version, it would be an 0493. So, if you recall back to us discussing about it being specifically for an outswing application because it doesn't come with a rim strike, well, that's not a problem because you can order it with a rim strike. It'd be very typical to see a casement fastener used, again, in other applications where you need to just secure something. I've seen people install these on doors because there was a couple who lived together and now they're a family of 3. Well, they want to lock that door down to the basement by putting on some sort of a handle up high that it can't be reached at all. And a casement fastener, while in my opinion might be a bit overkill for that application, it's used for applications outside of casement windows. So the point is, you can see how the part number changes as the strike that is going to be included would change as well. And that goes for, of course, both the larger and the smaller unit. Okay, so very handy way to be able to get to their trim and auxiliary hardware. This material is where I know it is in this older catalog. It's not changed. It's not changed at all since then. And these older catalogs are more what I'm familiar with using. It's, the old adage, don't change anything. I like it just the way it is. Who moved my cheese? So now back on that manufacturer's page, that link to the manufacturer's website is very handy if you're looking for a very up-to-date view on finishes, of the several and many different derivative finishes that Baldwin offers. Their website can't be beat in terms of showing that. What we have here in terms of encyclopedic documents would be a master template index. Hundreds of pages of templates are listed there. We have it more than once apparently. This could be just very different variations or different original source material. I even have an old Baldwin catalog from 1976, which is very handy if you want to just look back in time and see some fun stuff that Baldwin manufactured. I don't know that any of these designs have survived in the last 50 years, near 45 years anyway. Although some of these part numbers haven't changed. That 6021 is still a good part number, that's for sure. All right, let's wrap up this video on camera. And what absolutely sets Baldwin apart is a couple of things. Number one, it's their fit and finish. If you are looking for exceptional fit and finish when it comes to the quality of the finished product, the detail, how well manufactured it appears in terms of it having an absolute finished and pleasant appearance, you're going to struggle to find someone better, especially when it comes to a company who is probably a global, well, not global, but that has a footprint that certainly covers the United States. Because I just stared at it, you'll notice that the strike, and I forgot to mention it, is a bit V-shaped in the sense that it is narrower at the bottom than it is at the top. The top is wider, and that's so that when you throw the latch, it will serve to draw the window tighter together. I meant to mention that earlier. So some things that make Baldwin stand apart. Now, in the world of hardware, you have your imported builder's hardware that is very good looking, very attractive in its finish, lots of nice designs, etc. It's imported material generally. You then have Baldwin. After that, you really have boutique manufacturers where, I've done projects where a pair of knobs only are $400. So excluding the boutique manufacturers and then not wanting the material that is going to be inferior to Baldwin in terms of the fit and finish and quality, Baldwin resides in that middle area where it's exceptional quality, especially dollar for dollar. The fit and finish is always astounding. From my personal perspective, Baldwin is my go-to. I would have lots of clients that would build, a custom home. They would come to me for the Baldwin hardware, and then whatever trim and auxiliary they can get their hands on, such as hinges and door stops and other ancillary hardware, like a casement fastener, although you don't sell these very often. So the fit and finish is number one. Number two, their tech support. 100% of the time that I call the factory, I get an exceptional experience working with someone who clearly understands the product completely. And if that person doesn't, occasionally I'm transferred to someone else. And an example of that would be I had a client who, their client had a couple of mortise locks, Baldwin mortise locks, that they needed to change the function of the lock, or they needed to replace the lock body is what it was. So why are you replacing it? Well, it doesn't work right anymore. Oh yeah? Can you take the cover off and send me a picture of it? It turns out it was a spring. Well, this lock, I had determined through the conversation, was from about the late 1970s, about 1976 coincidentally. And I had indicated to the client, I intimated, let me call Baldwin first. Their lock chassis design, in my experience, hasn't changed really at all. I'm sure that it must have at some point, somehow in the last 30 years of my experience, but I couldn't point my finger to a case where I know that it changed. So I called Baldwin and explained, I've got a lock body, here's the function from about 1977. And the person that I spoke to, the actual person, said, does it have a blue cover on it? I said, yes. And I understand that lock cases from that era had blue outside plates. He says, well, that's interesting. I was actually on the assembly line, and I could have built that mortise lock. So the gentleman knew exactly the spring that was needed for the lock. Furthermore, he knew exactly what spring he could pull off the shelf to fix that lock because it was the same spring. Okay? So in that instance, we were able to go back to the client and say, yeah, the few $100s you thought you were going to have to spend, Baldwin's just shipping out a spring. And if you can change that spring, great. If not, ship it all to me. I'll change the spring and ship it back to you. So really great experience with them. But it's not only that. You can go with the lower end decorative hardware lines, but with Baldwin, they had a line called the Images. And it's not unheard of for a part to break, meaning the part breaks after 20 years of use, the latch bolt on the Images line, and the end user calling the large corporation and saying, I have a broken part. It's not unheard of for Baldwin to say, don't worry, we're going to send you a replacement. So when you spend the more money up front for the higher quality item, that does pay off long term. So if you're going to be doing a house for you or for somebody else, how many years is the finished hardware expected to last? I don't know, the life of the house? So making an investment in a company that will permit the hardware to last as long as the house is the other reason that I go to Baldwin. And plus, it's just so darn beautiful. Their Estates line has so many different options on their mortise locks in terms of not only levers and knobs, but their grip sets. Just beautiful material. If you have any questions on the Baldwin 0496 and a 150 finish or any other Baldwin lock, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.